Hello everybody, this is Vasil. I hope you are doing okay. Welcome back to the Instagram Like app. In this video we're going to continue our series and I'm going to show you how you can go and retrieve all the users in the project, and then I'm going to show you how you can follow and unfollow them so you can see their posts. It might get a little bit confusing, so if you have any questions don't forget to ask me in the comment section below. I tried my best to explain it for you guys, so I hope you guys enjoy.
Let's begin from where we left, guys. This is our storyboard. And right here, this is the view that we're gonna receive when we are logging in or when we are signing up. Now I want to make this view to show my users, all the users that I've created in this app. Let's go and modify this a bit. I'm gonna put this back to white. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a navigation bar. Let's go and put a navigation bar right there. And an UI view to make it look prettier. I'll put the UI view here like this, and let's give it a color of yellowish, and this one is yellow, and let's take this out. Actually it's button yellow. Very good. Now I want this to be, let's go closer, like this, and put this up. Let's give some constraints for this too. Now this view is gonna be pinned on the top, everything is 0, and so is this one, like this, and it's gonna have a height of 44, and this one is gonna have a height of 44 as well, of 20 actually, sorry, it's height of 20. Perfect. Now these are gonna stay on the top. Now if you double click on the title, you can change this title and say users. And what we want to do is we want to put a table view right here so we can show all our users. So let's go and put the table view. We drag the table view and we're gonna expand it. Let's give a constraint of everything 0 like this. Amazing. Now one last thing, I'm gonna put a logout button. So if you say bar button and put it into the navigation bar and say log out like this, and give it in color of white, maybe, whatever, I will leave it white. And you want this to have a segue to this view and say show, drag and release it here and say show. And let's go and create our cell. We want to have a custom cell that's gonna have the image and the full name of our user. So how you create a custom cell? By selecting the table view, let's go and add one prototype cell. So like this we created one prototype cell, and now we can edit this. Let's go and put this to height of 60 like this, and I want to put an image view in there. So UI image view, and go and put it in there, and I will have to give it constraints. The constraints are gonna be 50-50, 50 width and 50 height, I mean 50-50, and I also wanted 8 pixels from the left, so like this. And now one last thing, I want to center it vertically in the container, so I have to select this, and now it's perfectly aligned there. Very good. Now this is gonna be the image of our users. And let's go and put a label, UI label, and that label is gonna have the full name of our users, just like this. And let's give it a constraint. It's gonna be 8 pixels from the left image view, and add this, and we want to center it vertically in the container as well. Perfect. This is gonna stay there. Now that we created this, let's go and create our custom cell class where we can call it later in our code and modify it. Right click on your project and go new file, and this is gonna be a new Cocoa Touch class, and you want this to be a UI table view cell. this and call this, I'm gonna delete the table view and call this user cell and create. Now we created our class and I'm gonna delete this as I don't need it. And let's go and connect our outlets. So going back to our storyboard, if you select the table view cell, you have to do two things. You need to give an identifier and to specify the class. Now let's go and specify the class in your identity inspector. The class is user cell and the identifier is gonna be also user cell, like this. Those two are needed for us to specify that we want to use this cell. Now let's open our assistant editor. Okay, by selecting the cell, our automatic opens user cell, and we want to connect our image view and call it user image, and our full name label. So I'm gonna drag it, call this name label. Very good. And one more thing I'll need the user ID. And why I will need the user ID is because when I tap on this cell, I want to follow that user that I tapped. And when I tap it again, I will unfollow the user. And how are you gonna know that you're following the user? Simply by tapping on here on the side, we're gonna put a tick, and that you know that you're following this user. And by tapping it again, you're gonna unfollow it. So that's why you will need the user ID in this cell. So var user ID, and this is gonna be a string that for sure is gonna exist. Very good. Now we created our cell, and we need to go and create a view controller where we can write our code for our table view and everything. Let's go and create this. Right click on Instagram like, new file, and this is a new Cocoa attach class, and this is gonna be a view controller, UI view controller. And you're gonna call these users. Very good. And create. I'm gonna delete the unnecessary code. And let's go back to our main storyboard and do the same like we did to our cell. We need to specify the view controller. So by going to identity inspector, and as class you put users view controller. And now let's go and create our outlets. So by opening assistant editor, you can clearly see by selecting our view controller, our automatic opens user view controller. So on the top, let's go and create our outlets. The outlet we're gonna need here is just our table view, and also an action for our logout button, which is gonna press logout pressed. Very good. That's all we need for now. So we can close our assistant editor, and let's go and write code to our users view controller. In order to listen to your table view and to insert things in there, you need to convert to two delegates, the UI table view delegate and the UI table view data source. And your storyboard, you need to connect that table view delegate to this class. You can either do it in code or from the storyboard. So basically in code, I'm going to show you how to do it. You just type self.tableview.delegate equals self and self.tableview.dataSource equals self. And that listens to those two. If you want to do it in your storyboard, you go to your storyboard and you select your table view and right click and drag to users view controller, and you can press here data source and delegate, and now you can see there are two dots here. That means that it is connected. So I'm gonna do it with our storyboard, so I'm gonna delete this code here and this one as well. Alright, now the error we are getting here, we need to convert to our table view delegate, and that means that we need to write some methods for our class to run. And those methods are simple: number of sections in table view, and we need just one section as we're gonna have just our user section. Cell for row at index path, and that means for every row what we're gonna return a cell. So you have to create the cell by saying let cell equals table view dot dequeue reusable cell with identifier and for string. The identifier, if you remember, is user cell. Now, if you go back to your main storyboard and you select the cell, and you can see right here the identifier is user cell, and for index path is the index path up above. So you say index path, and you want to specify this, you want to cast it as user cell in order to get the user cell properties, which are the image view, the full name, and the user ID. And simply you return cell, but before that, in here we will need to write some code. For example, we will need to show the image, show the name, and put into that cell a user ID. One last method that you need to implement for your code to compile is number of rows in section, and number of rows in section is gonna be the number of users you're gonna have, which means that we need to write a method to retrieve all our users and store it into an array, and then we're gonna return the users from that array. So up here above, I'm gonna create this array. So let's go and say var users, and this is gonna be equal an array, but an array of what actually? I want to have it an empty array, but I don't want an array of string or anything. I want to have an array of users, but Swift doesn't know what user is. So we will have to create this user as an object. To keep our code clean, I'm gonna create this user and I'm gonna make groups. So let's go and create some groups. I'm gonna create new group here. I'm gonna call this ViewControllers, and under my ViewControllers, I'm gonna put all my ViewControllers, which are these three. Alright, a new group of custom cells, because we will have one more cell, custom cell, and we have the user cell already. So let's go and put user cell into custom cells, just to keep it clean. And we also need another group that's gonna be called objects. For now, I'm gonna create a user object, and later on we will need to create a feed object for every post that we're gonna create. Now, in objects, let's go and create a new file. And this file is gonna be a Cocoa Touch class with a subclass of NSObject. And let's call this a user. Go and create this. What a user has? A user simply has three things: a user ID, a full name, and we want to have an image, but that image is gonna have a URL where we can download it from our Firebase. So I will call this image path. So let's go. First thing, we want the user ID, var user ID, and this user ID is a string. It's gonna exist. We want the full name, var full name, which is gonna be string. And we want an image path, which is gonna be a URL, but we'll use string. Very good. Now going back to our users ViewController, we want here to specify that users is gonna be a user array. And into our number of sections, we're gonna return user.count. Now let's go and write our code to retrieve the users. I'm gonna write my code right here. This is a function that's gonna retrieve users. Now, to retrieve my users, I need to go to my Firebase database, and I need to loop through all my users folder and return all the users except one user, which is me. I don't want to return myself. If you open Safari and go to your Firebase console, I have already opened it right here. You can go to database, and as you can see, I just have one user right now. So if I try to log in right now, and after I retrieve my users, I'm gonna receive 0 users, as I'm not gonna include myself. So this is gonna crash as user.count is empty. So I'll have to say user.count question mark 2 times 0. What that means is gonna check if user count exists, otherwise use 0. Very simple. And now let's go and write our code. First we need to import Firebase. We need to import Firebase so we can go and receive our users. If you remember from my last video, you need to create a reference to your database, and then go and loop through your users folder. So let's go and create a reference. Let ref equals a Firebase database, and this is a reference. Now we have reference, so simply we want to go ref.child, and our child, as you can see, is called users. I'm going to say users, and I want to make a query in there. So if you say query ordered by key, it's going to give you in an order, and you want to observe a value, a single event value, and you want this one with data snapshot. So if you click it, and the event type you want to check the value of your users. And then if you double click this, it didn't autofill it for me, but if you double click it, it will autofill it for you. So simply I'm just gonna remove this. I'm gonna open and close curly brackets, and here I'm gonna say snapshot in. Basically this will give me a snapshot of all the values into my users folder ordered by key. Because a snapshot is not actually something that Swift knows, so I will have to go and downcast it into another variable, and I'll call this let users equal snapshot dot value as, I want to cast this as a dictionary of string to any object. Because if I go to my Firebase, I know that this is a dictionary. You see this string, and this is any object, because here you can see this contains another dictionary. So simple as this. Now we have the users, and simply you want to loop through those users. So if you say for, now users is a dictionary, so string is always gonna be the key, and the any object is gonna be those values here. So I'm not gonna need the key, so I'm gonna say open parenthesis underscore, which means I'm not gonna use it, comma, value, and I want to loop this in users. Now value, as I said, is gonna be everything in here. And what I want to do is I want to get all the user IDs and then check if those user IDs are equal into my user ID, then not to include my user ID, but include all the other IDs. So let's go and get the user ID of every user. If let UID equals value, open square brackets, UID, because that's how I call it in here, UID, and I want this to as string. If you find a user ID, what you want to do is you want to check if this user ID does not equal to my user ID that I'm the current user, and then continue adding into our array the users. So if UID not equal to fireauth.auth.current user, and this is UID, so if the UID does not equal to the current user ID, go and add users into your user array. First, you need to create a single user that you're gonna insert into the array. So right here you say let user to show, because this is the user that we're gonna show, equals a user, and open close. That's an empty user. And now you want to make an if-let statement and check that all those three exist, because we do need them to exist so we don't get any crashes. So you just say if-let full name equals value square brackets full name, and you want this as string, comma, let image path equals value square brackets how is it called, URL to image as string as well. And now that we know that those exist, we continue and we create our user. Now the user ID, don't forget that we already set it right here if it exists, so we don't need to include it in this one. So user to show dot full name equals the full name, that full name right here that we know exists. User to show dot image path equals image path that we created right here. And lastly, user to show dot user ID equals UID, and this is UID right here. Now that we created our user, we simply want to say self dot user array dot append, and new element we're gonna append is user to show. And you want to clear this array before you go into that loop, so you don't get duplicate values. So self.user.remove all. You just want to clear it so you don't get multiple values like this. And like this you get all the users from there and you put it into your user array, and like this you're gonna get some users in here. Now for select row at index path, you want to go and get for each user in your user array and populate that cell. And you want cell.namelabel.text, you want to get for that index path, you want to get that user's name. And the way you do this is you say self.user, you go to your array, you open brackets and you say index path.row dot full name. So basically you go into your user array and for that index path you get the full name of that user, and you want to get the user ID like this as well. So self.userid equals self.user index path.row dot user ID. Now for the image, if you have seen my other videos, I'll have to create an extension for my image view where I'm instantly gonna download the image by passing an image path, and the image is gonna appear. At the very bottom, let's go and create this extension UI image view. Now that means that we are gonna write a function that any image view can actually use it. And this function I'm gonna call is download image. Download image, and I will need to pass a URL there. And I'm gonna say from image URL, which URL is string. That's gonna exist like this. And what you want to do is you want to create a URL session where it's gonna download the image and then it's gonna update. So let's go and say let URL equals URL request, because we need a URL request for that, with a URL, and this URL is a URL made of string, and the string here is image URL, and we close everything. Now we have our NS URL request, so simply you can say let task, which is our URL session, as I said, dot shared dot data task with URL request, but I want the one with completion handler of data response and error, and the URL request is URL, and completion handler. If you press enter, no, it didn't work again for me. I'm gonna have to write this manually, so I'll have to delete everything, close this one here and open brackets like this. Very good. And this is gonna give me a data response and an error in like this. Yeah, if you press enter, for you guys it will normally work, but for me it didn't work. And let me just fix this. Otherwise, if it didn't work for you guys as well, you can write it like this, and you want to check if you didn't receive any error. If error not equal to nil, print the error and return. Otherwise, we want to continue to our code. And very simply, we want to dispatch a main queue because URL session goes into your background. So whenever you want to do something into your UI, into your user interface, you need to always do it in the main queue. Otherwise, it's not gonna work, and even sometimes it's gonna crash for you. So now that we want to set the image, we need to do it in the main queue. Otherwise, we're gonna get a crash. And the way we dispatch a queue into our main thread, we say dispatch queue dot main, and we want it to be async. And the code we're gonna write is self.image equals UI image with data. And the data is the data that we received, and we know it exists. Now, self.image, to not get confused, is the image of the image view. As I said, any image view can get this. So this image will go into that image view that calls this method. It's very simple. I hope you guys understand this. And here that we close our task, we want to say task.resume. Resume, like this. And that's our code. Now, if you go back to your self or row at index path, you can say self.user image. Now this is an image view, so I can say dot download image, and I can access this code right here. And the download image is gonna be self.user index path.row. I want to go to that specific user's image and say dot image path that I know that exists, like this. So now if I go and create more users, this should everything work perfectly. So let's go and do that. I'm gonna run my code. So let's go and create another user. I'm gonna go and sign up. I'm gonna create another user, which I'm gonna call Harry Potter. I'm gonna delete that. Email is gonna be hp@hp.com. Password asd. Let's go and select a picture, and that picture is gonna be this one. Choose and next. Perfect. Now, the reason this didn't work is because I forgot to call in viewDidLoad retrieve users. So let's go and say retrieve users and try again. Now let's go and log in. Yeah, sometimes I forget to write some code, so it happens, it's normally. Don't forget to write this in viewDidLoad so you get called actually this method. And go log in. And apparently nothing happens. Okay, it didn't work again. And the reason that didn't work again is because I forgot to update my table view. So right here, after I loop through all my users, I want to say self.tableview.reload data, and that's gonna go and reload all the data. And one last thing here, ref.remove all observers, because if you don't remove the observers, it's gonna crash if you try to leave the ViewController. So hopefully everything is gonna work smoothly right now. And let's go and log in. hp@hp.com and asd login. And as you can see, Vasil is right here, and this is his profile picture. Now, the square picture I don't like very much, so I'm gonna show you how you can go and create your circle picture. And the way you can do this is if you go into your main storyboard, and here where you created your cell, if you press on your image view, like this, let me close this, into your image view, go to Identity Inspector, and right here you can add two things. And those two things you want to add are some layers. The layers you want to add is layer.corner radius to make rounded corners, and this has to be a type of number, and the number you want to give it, you want to give half of the width that the image has. Now apparently my image has 50 width, so I'm gonna give it a value of 25. And the other layer you want to do is layer.masks to bounce. That is needed, so this one gets fired, and you want it to be boolean and this one ticked. Now let's go and run this and see how it looks like. I'm gonna go with hp at hp.com, sd login, and Vasil-Nunev appears with a perfectly round picture. That's amazing. Now what you want to do is, by selecting Vasil-Nunev, you want to follow him and you want to appear a tick here, and then you can unfollow him. Now, before I continue, let me explain to you how following a user works. Basically, every user in our database right here will need to have two more fields. Those two more fields are gonna be following and followers. Every user is gonna have a field of followers with all the people that are gonna follow them, and also a field with following with all the people that specific user is following. And something amazing that Firebase does is we can add those fields dynamically. As you can see, we don't have them right here, but in our code we can write them and Firebase is gonna create them. And what we will have to write is, we have to write a code that is gonna check if actually those fields exist, and if those exist, we'll have to loop from both following and followers and add extra things. And if you want to unfollow users, you will have to remove following and followers from users. So basically, right now, if I want to follow Vasil-Nunev, Harry Potter will get the field of following, and in that following is gonna get the user ID of Vasil-Nunev, and Vasil-Nunev is gonna get the field of followers with the ID of Harry Potter. And if Harry Potter unfollows Vasil-Nunev, then Vasil-Nunev is gonna remove the field of followers, and same thing with Harry Potter, the field following is gonna disappear. I hope all this makes sense, so let's go and write this in code. How is this gonna look like? I'm gonna close this one here. Go to Users ViewController. Now, one method that we want to implement is a table view method that's called didSelectRow@IndexPath. Basically, for every row that we're selecting, we will check if our current user is following that person or not. As you can imagine, we'll need another reference to our database and also the user ID of our current user. So let's go and get letUID is going to be the user ID of our current user, and that you get by forAuth.auth.exists current user.exists UID. Now we have our user ID, and we want the reference of our database, which is firedatabase.database.reference. And something else that we're also gonna need, we're gonna need a key, because we're gonna add all those users under a unique string, which Firebase can give us as a key. And the way you get these keys, if you say let key equals reference.child, and that child is our users folder, and you can say .child by AutoID, and this is gonna give you the ID of other child, and you want to get the key. Now, key is gonna be something unique every time this gets called, and that makes it very safe for us to add into our database followers and following people. And we also want to check if our current user is a follower of the user that it selected. So I'm gonna create a Boolean variable called isFollower, and we'll have an initial value of false, that it's not following its initial one. Now we want to go and loop through our following people, which means our current user. If our current user is following that person, that means that we are gonna unfollow him, otherwise we're gonna follow him. And the way you do this, you have to observe values. And if you remember, we did it before as with our users, ref.child with a string of users, and that is another child, and we want to go to our current user, and UID is our current user. So we are going to our current user, and we want to check the field child following. Now I know that this does not exist yet, but Firebase is not gonna crash if you try to observe that value. So if the field does not exist, we're gonna go and follow the user. Otherwise, we're gonna see if it's actually following or not. And we want to query this ordered by key, so we have everything in an order. And we want to observe a single value. And this single value is with a Firebase data snapshot, same one as we did with our retrieving users. And we want to check the value of that, and again it didn't work, so I'll have to open and close brackets like this, say snapshot in, and right here I can write my code, and I want to go and get the field of following right here from our snapshot. I'm gonna say if let following equals snapshot dot value, and I want to say as string to any object. I want to have a dictionary of this, as this following is actually gonna have all our users that we are following. Now, as you can see right now, we don't have this following, so this is gonna give a nil, so it's not gonna go inside that method. So right here, we want also to write code to follow as user has no followers, and we're gonna write the code in a bit. Now, since in here we see that we have following users, we want to go and loop through those users and see if we're following the user that we selected. So the way we do this for, and since this is a dictionary, I will have two values, and I'll have a key, I'm gonna call key, and a value like this. And in following, you're gonna see in a bit how everything looks like in our database. So I'm going, and this key is gonna be our unique value, and value is gonna be the user that we are following. Very simply, you can say if the value, and that value as, you have to say as string, double equals self dot user at index path dot row equals to the user ID, that means that this value equals to the user that we selected, so which means our current user is actually following this user and we want to unfollow him. And since we want to unfollow that user, we have to say is follower to true, because right now we are following him, so is follower equals to true. And right here, how we delete values from our Firebase is something very simple. You have to go into that field that you want to delete and just say remove value. And the field that we want to remove is ref.child, and we want to go to our users. We want to go to our current user, which is child.userid, and we want to go into our following users, and the child is following slash that key right here. We want to remove this one. So if you say backward slash like this, key, and dot remove value, I don't know, it doesn't give completion, remove value, now this is gonna go and remove the user that we are following, and k is a unique value, so we can specify k and delete this. And now we also want to go to our user that we selected and remove a follower, and that follower that we're gonna remove is the current user. So the way you go to your user that you selected, ref.child users, and you want child, and that child is self.user at indexPath.row.userid, and now we are under our selected user, and we want to go to that selected user to child. We want to go to our followers folder, so followers and slash, and we want to delete that user with that specific key, so backwards slash key, and you want to say dot remove value. Now we removed the user from our database, and one thing we want to do, since we're going to have a check mark into our table view, we want to specify that cell to not have a check mark. So self.tableview.cell4row at index path, we have index path from up here, and you want to say accessory type equals none. Now right here in this code we unfollowed our user, and let's go and follow the user. I'm gonna delete this here, and where we're gonna follow the user is right here. As I said, follow as user has no followers, and also is not following this user. So you have to say if exclamation mark is follower, which means if is follower equals to false, that's how you can say if exclamation mark is follower, you have to go and follow that user. And I'm gonna create a dictionary here, let following, that I'm gonna create this following folder, and it's gonna have a key of following slash backward slash cat. That's gonna have a value of basically you want to follow the user that you selected, so it's self.user at index path dot row, and you want to follow that user ID. And let followers, and you want to go and add into your selected user a follower of the current user. So you say followers slash backward slash k, and you want to add a value of UID. And very simply, you have to go and update the child into your Firebase. So if you say ref.child users, you need to go to users, and then you have to go to your current user, which is UID, and you want to update child values, and you want to update the following. And the same for the user that you are following, child, and this one is self.user at index path dot row dot user ID, and you want to update child values, and you want to update the followers. And very simply, you want to tick this cell. So if you say self.tableview dot self for row at index path, and you want to have an accessory type of equals dot checkmark. Yeah, checkmark. And right here after this, you need to remove observers on the reference, ref.remove all observers, so you don't get a crash. And let's go and see how this works. This actually failed, and I want to say here, not key, I want to get the key right here. And the key, I'm sorry about that. Now let's go and run this. Now let's go and log in. hp@hp.com, asd, login. Now, as you can see, Vasil-Nunev is right here. Now let's go and select this. I selected it, and as you could see, it went here and added followers into another place. So I'm just gonna delete both. I made the mistake. I'm gonna show you right now, guys. Let's go delete this as well. Basically, right here I said to say the child. I want to go to users. I didn't go to users, so it created it over in another folder, and I don't want that. So let's go and see how this is gonna work right now. I'm gonna log in hp@hp.com, asd, and now, as you can see, this is Vasil-Nunev. I'm gonna click on him, and here Vasil-Nunev got followers and Harry Potter got following. And if you expand this, you can see all the people that Harry Potter is following, and here you can see all the followers of Vasil-Nunev, and you can see a tick mark came in. Now if I select it again, you see I remove those values. I'm gonna go and create a quick account. Go sign up. I'm gonna skip this part for you guys. So basically right here I create a new account, and I'm gonna go and follow both of them, Harry Potter and Vasil-Nunev, and I'm following both of them. And you can see Tom got following 2 values, and he's following those 2 users, and you can see Vasil-Nunev and Harry Potter got 1 follower. Very good. Now what you want to do is you want to check every time that you're logging in, you want to check if you're following that user, because if I log out right now and I go again with my tm.com asd, and you can see I'm actually not following those anymore. So I'll have to write a code where I'm gonna have to check if I'm following those. And basically in check following function, I'm gonna say check following. I need to pass an index path because I need to check for every index path if I'm following .user. So index path, and this is gonna be an index path, of course. And what you want to do is you want to go and loop through the following, same thing as we are doing here basically, and you want to see if you want to add the check mark or not. So very simply, I'm just gonna copy some of the code here. I will need these two. Now, having a redundancy is not very good. I could find a way to reduce the redundancy, but I'm not gonna do that right now. And I'm gonna get this one right here where I'm looping through following. Right, this one, I'm gonna go and copy and paste this, and I'm gonna close that, close this, close that, and right here I want to remove the observers of the reference, remove all observers. Basically in here I want to check, as it says right here, if the value equals to that user, that means that I'm following the user. So basically what I want to do is just put a check mark into that table view cell. So table view dot cell for orient index path, and the index path is this index path. That's why I had this right there. And dot accessory type equals check mark. And I'm not gonna need this, so I can just say underscore, and let's go and run this code again. Now if I enter as TomTom, I'm already following Vasil, Nunev and Harry Potter, so I'll have to see if while I'm logging in I'm having those check marks. But as again I forgot to call this method, so in here I will have to say check following with index path like this. I'm forgetting constantly to write some code. I'm sorry about that, guys. Let's go. Now you can see TomTom follows two people, so if I log in with him, SD, I should see that I'm following them. And as you can see, both my check marks are there. So if I follow Vasil Nunev right there, you can see Vasil Nunev lose a follower, and you can see TomTom lost a following. So that's it. That's how you can follow and unfollow users.
And this is the end of our video, guys. I hope it wasn't that much confusing. In the upcoming episodes I'm gonna show you how you can upload pictures, and then you can go and like and unlike pictures from the users that you're following. If you have any questions about this video or any other video, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you like, please don't forget to subscribe and thumbs up for more videos like this. And here you can also check my other tutorials. See you in the next episode.